Education drives change, and the more fact-based information that is shared, the more likely people will take steps to learn and change their habits. When it comes to accessing this information, especially when it comes to our health, we often automatically think about our family doctor. But more and more Canadians are working closely with their pharmacists to help manage their care. Welcome to the Unsmoke Conversation, the journey towards a smoke-free Canada. I'm your host, Melanie Nicholson, and today we're welcoming Don Makowichuk to the podcast. Don is the past president of the Alberta Pharmacists Association and is also a community pharmacist. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Good to be here.
That's wonderful, and we're thrilled to have you. I'd love to start with, as a pharmacist, what drew you to tobacco harm reduction?
Well, the history of harm reduction is quite interesting for us pharmacists in Alberta, particularly because of our scope of practice. It's been expanded and we have access to information and networks to assist patients with their healthcare needs. One of the things that is of quite interest is we spent a lot of time dealing with opioid use disorder. And what happens with opiates is there's a whole system of pharmacological interventions that you work with a patient, also with counseling, and also with follow-up. Now, in harm reduction, it's not only these particular cases because you also have issues with mental health. So this is really where it led me to look at harm reduction, the policies, the minimalization of harm, and some of the everyday tools that you need to be successful in this environment. Working with patients takes time, and they have to trust you in order to purvey the information that they require to make informed decisions. So in harm reduction, it's more about working with the patient to understand what the end goals are. And it's a journey. It does take time for sure.
There's a huge learning element here from what you've said. So how can pharmacists then educate themselves on these non-combustible alternatives?
Well, tobacco harm reduction is an interesting field. One of the things that happens is once you go through the whole process of the smoking cessation curve or algorithm, as we would say in pharmacy, you use nicotine replacement products. We use pharmacological medications to assist with this. Over a 12-week period, you have follow-up and counseling, and eventually you hopefully have the patient reduce the amount of nicotine that they're using or stop completely. The goal is always to stop using it. However, one of the problems that we have seen is that we have to meet the patient where they're at. We usually have to say, come back when you're ready to quit. Well, in today's world, that just doesn't work. So it's a situation where what are all the alternatives for them? And these alternatives are in a strata that relate to all aspects of nicotine-containing products. And these include e-cigarettes, vaping devices, heat not burn, snus, and also nicotine pouches. All the patients have questions about these products, their efficacy, and whether they can be used in this manner. So it's a question of finding the best match for the patient, because we know of the 6,000 chemicals that combustible cigarettes produce. So if we can find a way to suggest to a patient that if they're unwilling to quit, that maybe they can look at some of these alternatives. The question always is, who do they trust? So, you have to provide them the information, educate them as much as possible, and let them make the decision which way is the best way to go for them. Because each patient is unique. There is no one that will agree to not trying a variety of these products before they feel comfortable reducing their cigarette consumption, because we want them to stop that as soon as possible.
So when we look at trends and opportunities to move forward, can you, as a pharmacist and a stakeholder in the pharmaceutical industry, what would you say some of these emerging trends are that might affect policy and access for patients for these different areas?
I think what happens is we're still early in the game on the evidence. The epidemiology report or the study of some of these new trends are going to take a long time before they become evident. And everything in pharmacy is evidence-based. So we're starting to see some evidence. There's evidence in other countries. The UK has made some inroads. But for me, definitely the use of e-cigarettes to a certain extent, even heat not burn, they have a place for them in this area, because you can consume nicotine, but nicotine is not the problem. It's all the other harmful and potentially harmful constituents that happen when you light a cigarette up to 850 degrees centigrade. There's some of the problems. What is the best way to use these devices? Where do I buy them? Are they readily available? What do you think about different types of vaping devices? So there's more of these things where they have these questions, and we have to be available to educate the pharmacy colleagues to at least understand that their job is to provide this information and let them make the decision, but not to say, well, when you're ready to quit, come back. We have to meet the patient where it is, because my history with opiate use disorder is you've got to move the needle. You have to move the discussion to a point where you're making some inroads.
So let's talk a bit more about, you've talked about meeting a patient where they're at, which is so important. What are some examples of provincial programs that you've experienced or been involved in that can help people quit or change their habits?
So across Canada, it's a variety of discussions about scope of practice, and scope of practice does vary from province to province, and that's a regulatory environment. We're fortunate in Alberta; we have access to a provincial health information system. We have a large scope of practice, so we can work in this area. We can apply and get approved for advanced prescribing. So if you do take and are approved for a program, you have a lot of latitude. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Quebec lead the way. There are remuneration and programs for pharmacists to work with patients. There are some medication review capabilities in other provinces, but it's basically a scope of practice and the interaction with the patient. So it's pretty available. But again, the problem always is, where is the patient at in that journey? You have to make that decision. Some want to quit. So how do you help those? That's the trend that we're at now, is we're beyond the regular thing of treating the condition. Part of the problem is we've got the smoking rates down to a level now across this country, but we can't go any further without making a change in philosophy. You go from a high of 25% to maybe 14%, but we can't become smoke-free without using these products, without talking to our patients about them.
Don, when you think about where the industry has come and where it's going in the scope of tobacco harm reduction, can you share what impact you would like to have as we go forward?
I've been a trailblazer, a pioneer. I tend to early adopt different things and make my decisions about whether it's relevant or not. This is a very relevant topic. If anything told us any history in pharmacy, the information has to be provided for the patient to make the decision. And pharmacy is the best suited and the best prepared to do it, because you can't trust non-lay people to help make your healthcare decisions. The industry is full of things that you can find on the web, and you can find on a variety of other areas. But we get the question about, what do you think about this? Is this suitable for me? So my goal is to educate as many pharmacists across this country to consider dealing with the patient, because we can never get to a no smoke verification in this country without changing the way that we look at it. And there's evidence all over the world to do that.
Well, and I think that having these conversations and that continued education is really just a key part of what we're trying to do here. So thank you so much, Don, for participating in the Unsmoke Conversation. And we really appreciate you taking the time today.
You're very welcome. Great to chat with you.